What's up, guys? We're at the Athlete Matrix in Mississauga, Ontario. We're here before Mastery Camp. We're just getting prepped up. We got the coaches here. We're tackling athleticism today. And we got Tyler Ray, the vert guy. We have Reid Hall here, head strength and conditioning at the Matrix. I'm Martin Reeder, 2012 Olympian, and we're jamming on athleticism. We got great minds, and we're going to tackle a conversation that's more volleyball specific. Reid, how are we going to do that today?
Well, all volleyball players want to jump higher and hit harder. So the focus of these videos coming up is all about how to optimize your approach, maximize your jump, and position your body so that you can hit harder. And we have no better person than the top vertical training specialist, Tyler Ray, to help introduce some cue words. The thing is, we want common cue words that we can use to help us improve.
Perfect. Thanks, Reid. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. What's going on, guys? First of all, my pleasure to be here. I can't wait for Mastery Camp tomorrow. It's going to be an awesome experience. But let's get after some common issues that I see in the world of jumping, specifically in the area of volleyball. I think that's gone under-addressed for a lot of years.
Oh, yeah.
So I come from a background in professional dunking, as an athlete, also as a track and field athlete for many years. I jump pretty high. At my peak, I was looking at around a 48-inch vertical, so I know how to get a human body off the ground pretty well and become a little bit better known in the last couple of years of being able to help people jump higher in less than an hour and just getting into some common cues and keywords to help kind of solidify that. So today, let's take a look at what I believe to be the most important, or at least the two most important elements of the volleyball approach. What we're going to get into, guys, is the concept of standardizing some terminology as it relates to the approach. One is going to be the penultimate stride. And I'm just going to demonstrate what the stride looks to give you guys a little bit of context. So as we go to approach the net, we have to have a series of steps. And typically it's anywhere from 3-4 steps or so for a volleyball approach. Yeah. Let's assume that we're dealing with the 3-stride approach. I am a right-left plant athlete, which means that the last 2 strides of my jump are right, left. Those are the last 2 contacts that hit the ground. Our penultimate stride is our second last stride. So for me, the second last stride is going to be from my left foot to my right foot here. Our penultimate stride is responsible for a couple things. One is going to be, first and foremost, is to continue the acceleration of the athlete from the initial approach to the hit at the net. Second is going to be to lower the center of mass in order to set us up for a powerful position as we get to our plant and our takeoff position. What I'm seeing predominantly in the world of volleyball is just a misunderstanding of how to accelerate appropriately through those last 2 strides and creating some intuitive jumping behaviors. So what we want to see is when we're going through that penultimate stride, we're creating a push. And the cue here is going to be push. So if we load up that first of 2 contacts of our penultimate stride and we cover some distance, so we push, what we're going to do is increase the acceleration of the athlete into our takeoff position. What we don't want to happen is what's called walking through our penultimate. Walking through the penultimate just tells me that that athlete is not producing additional force or additional velocity into their plant, into their takeoff. Looks a little bit like this. A push through the penultimate is going to cover some distance. Walking through the penultimate, you're not going to see much pressure inputted into the ground, and you're going to get a little bit more of that walk step.
It looks almost like a fall, right?
A little bit like
into that step.
Absolutely, and that's a really common error. Is I think in the world of volleyball, we're taught to jump as a byproduct of the swing, right? We learn how to jump simply from going after a ball. But what happens is we can develop some inconsistencies in our approach as a result of being so focused on the target that we forget that we have to get to the target first. So what I want to do is encourage you guys to be a little bit more patient. And I know Reid's going to elaborate a little bit on this, but being patient into your approach is going to allow you to optimize the speed through your takeoff. And now I'd love to do a full approach here, but I'll end up probably hitting my head and ending up off frame. What we want to think about is a push into a punch. So our penultimate stride will lead into our block step. Our block step, so if this is our penultimate stride, this is our plant, and that last foot that hits the ground is our block step. Block step serves 2 purposes. One is going to serve as a braking mechanism, so it's going to transition all of the horizontal velocity and speed into vertical lift. And 2 is it's going to help to apply and amortize additional power into takeoff. So as I'm leaving the floor, I'm still dealing with horizontal speed. If I don't apply an appropriate break to my jump, meaning that if my foot is too parallel and I roll through my takeoff, and we see this I think a lot as volleyball coaches, is we cover far too much horizontal real estate. And then we're dealing with that terrible, you know, climbing on the net. And
there's a very inconvenient net there. Right. The way it's done.
And despite we think it's not there to catch the athlete, it's there to serve as part of the game. So what we want to do is making sure that we address that block foot appropriate to the position on the court. But what we're looking at is finding out from what position we're going to need a certain type of angle to that block foot. So as a left side or a power hitter, what am I looking to do in terms of body position as I approach the net?
Yeah, so as a left side, most of you already know, we got to get outside the court so that we're coming on an angle here. So if we assume this is the antenna right here, so it's here, I can get this here, now my block's that, but you see if the net is right here, I'm open. The reason I want this is now my shoulders, I'm facing the cross court, so this is my most powerful shot. So I got to make sure that I'm not only getting my feet into position, but I'm also getting my shoulders in position, because now I can be very powerful through these different areas.
And you'll notice what Reid did there is he intuitively placed his block foot parallel to his plant foot, having a shoulder a little bit more parallel to the net. What this allows us, he's elaborated on, is for the athlete as they elevate to be able to utilize some horizontal rotational forces through our midsection and our shoulder. So what we want to do is apply a little bit more of a severe angle to our block foot. The more severe of an angle we apply to that block foot means the more effect it's going to have on the joints associated to takeoff. So you have to understand that if you jump currently with plant or your block foot parallel to your plant foot and you decide just to crank it into a new position, you probably want to err on the side of progressively turning that foot in over time, or else you could be dealing with some sore ankles, some sore knees, and probably beyond being sore.
Well, like, think about this as a tool belt. If you only have one tool, one approach for every single set, there's no set that is the same. We have to adjust to everything. As the athlete, we want to keep as many options open from the hitting angle perspective as possible. So you're only as good as your feet, because the ball's not always going to come to that perfect sweet spot. You need to have different skills, different tools to be able to facilitate different approaches to get to different sets. So all of these angles that we're talking about, every athlete needs on the court, and you need to know how to implement these in the right moment, which I think I'm seeing a massive issue with, is people are just blacking out, doing the exact same approach at all times, subconsciously just doing the thing. Oh, that was a bad set, it was inside. Oh, that was a bad set, that was outside. They're not able to adjust appropriately to the set to keep the options open for the attack, which hopefully that resonates.
100%. And what you said there is utilizing the same approach for every scenario. Now, it's important to understand that while there are shifting need for circumstance in a game, hence sometimes we need to turn that block foot in a little bit more, the initiation of the jump in terms of, you know, the foundation of jump technique, that doesn't change. What changes is the time at which we initiate that movement. We always want to create smooth acceleration. I talk a lot about the concept of accelerating through a jump and not to a jump, right? We don't want to be accelerating to the point of a jump. I see this all the time. We get a lot of speed behind an athlete, and then they plant super hard and we lose all this speed, and what happens is our body just bleeds power. We spill it out all over the ground and we don't optimize our ability to get up and have options in the game. So understanding that position to position, we're going to have a different need for the severity of certain points of a jump, but those points of a jump will never ever change. Okay, so takeaways for the approach on those last two steps primarily are making sure we're accelerating from slow to fast, and that we're pushing and punching. We're pushing through the penultimate stride and we're punching into that block step. What will happen is if we don't initiate that block with enough intent, enough aggressiveness behind it, is that the athlete will continue to rotate over their center of mass and we'll get that horizontal travel. Now this might be necessary for an athlete maybe hitting on a back row or perhaps getting a set from further away. So I don't want this to confuse you in the sense that there's never a need to cover horizontal distance. When it comes to getting the most out of your body for the peak height of vertical, a sharper, more aggressive block will always get you there faster.
So to elaborate more on what Tyler's saying here, you're saying is I increase my angle of my foot here, this is going to allow me to get more up and down, right? If I get this foot facing more forward, I'm going to be traveling a lot more distance forward. And not only that, if my feet are facing forward, I can now no longer have rotation. So we've talked about goofy-footed hitters, right? That's where their feet are back, or people facing forward. They wonder why they deal with so many shoulder-related injuries, right? But if my feet are facing forward, I'm on the left side, now swinging the cross court, I have so much more internal rotation I have to swing into, and that is a lot of repetitive stress on our shoulder, which can lead to injuries. So this is not only having to optimize your jump and the athleticism behind your jump, but it's also a safer way to approach and attack a ball.
All puns intended.
And I'll just add a little bit more position-specific work. We often don't think about optimizing jumping for service. And the service game is how close or how far into the court we can actually make contact at the highest point to be closer to net, because the serve, in an ideal world, or a jump serve at least, is an attack, right? So we want to be able to float. So that is probably the situation, aside from, let's say, a C-ball back row or height, where we want to float as much as we can in the court, which means on your approach, you need to have a service spin approach, and then understand that when you're closer to net for the attack, that's a different, similar but different, where the approach for the service, there is no rotation other than up at the hip and the upper body. You're looking to jump into the court and ideally contact a meter plus into the court as high as possible.
And I think what you're speaking on is what we're doing is we're removing the break behind the block.
That's correct, yeah.
And in order to remove the break behind the block, we need to get it a little bit more underneath us axially or in a straight line, so that our body is able to actually roll through that point of contact, versus when we go to hit, we put our block foot a little bit further in front of us to create a different line of action.
That's correct.
So absolutely, there is always context, and there's always a need for different components of the jump to be elicited, situation dependent.
So I know a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is very, very technical, right? Well, volleyball is an extremely technical sport, but we see a lot of attackers, the problem is they can't even apply the technique because they just simply leave too early on their approach. So these are for outside hitters. As soon as I leave too early, so say I'm on the left side and the ball hasn't been left in the setter's hand and you're already approaching, now the set's not going where you want, you have to change direction and your body's out of position. But all the awesome technique that Tyler was talking about, if I'm able to leave late, be patient, so leave late, be patient, and approach fast, now I can optimize this technique and be very powerful. Yes. So if you're a coach right now and you're seeing some of your outside hitters, they're either getting the ball too early and reaching behind them, or they're approaching really slow, give them the keywords, be patient and be fast. I do believe the first layer of the onion is this technique here, because once you get this technique, even practicing away from the ball, just getting the footwork down, and then if you can go onto the volleyball court and we can be patient and be fast, we can work with this technique. Now, we need you to be patient with us, because what happens when you leave later and approach faster, you start making more errors initially. But this is really important, right? If your initial errors are you're up really high and you hit the ball way out of bounds, that's a good error to make. Because what happens as you start approaching faster and being more patient, you start hitting harder and seeing new angles. But you got to make errors, make errors, make errors. Oh, that was successful. Try to replicate that one. Error, error. Then it starts getting more and more consistent, and that's where your game really gets taken to another level. But you have to be okay with making errors.
I'd love to step in and just go from the philosophy of, let's say, coaching, and this applies to the athlete as well. Your offense is crippled if you as an athlete are leaving too early and you're not explosive. And what I mean by that is if you're leaving too early and you're subconsciously just not waiting and not exploding, you're anticipating a set that's on the inside, and that's the bar that you're setting. And then all of a sudden your entire offense starts to cater towards the athlete that doesn't have the patience to explode, and then you start to get tighter. That outside hitter has to be able to wait and be patient and then come in and crush it, which means your setter needs to be able to hit the pin. If your hitter comes in too early, then you're going to wind up setting a smaller offense. So the outside hitter really is that last resort. They have to have that patience and that trained skill. And that sets up the rest of the offense. And I see that a lot right now in younger teams.
Let me just bring it really quickly back to the technique side of things. And both great points on both your halves here. But one of the things to understand too is being patient and then accelerating being fast. One of the areas I see that could use a little bit of work is the initiation of the approach.
So let's dive into that.
Yeah,
let's
100%. What you see in volleyball, I'm sure this is something that has been coached for many, many years, but needs to be addressed, is the concept of falling into your approach. We use it, I imagine, as a rhythm tool to see the set or wait for the set, and we start falling into our approach. The problem is with falling into our approach is we set our body into a position that becomes very difficult to correct, and then mechanically is disadvantageous from that point. So as we start to roll forward into our approach, the athlete has a very difficult time, or the majority of the athletes I see don't recover the torso, it stays here. So through their penultimate stride, that second last stride, they have this closed angle. They're trying to cover distance while closed.
Right.
The problem is that trying to cover distance while closed and initiating extension through the hip to push, if our angle is closed, we're not going to be able to push as hard as we can as if we're open, sitting into the hip like a running stride.
Yeah.
So what I like to cue is wait and feel like you're being pulled through your approach. So the initiation of the approach, instead of being here, be a little bit taller, and we can think about being here and be able to kind of facilitate the blending between sprinting, running, and jumping.
So you say being pulled into it, you can be able to add power, but also you're going to get up quicker, right? Just positioning your body, right? If you're falling into it, you need to recorrect that pattern, which always takes time, right?
And think about your eyes, right? I imagine a really important part of a hitter's job is to be able to sight your set. So if I'm leading down and I'm going, my head is down and forward, I'm going to have to crank my neck back in order to find that set. And what's going to happen is you're going to find, again, some inefficiencies through the shoulder and upper back. And Reid knows, as a strength and conditioning coach, Martin, you as well, is that when we excessively hinge at the neck at that kind of C4, C5 range, we shut off a lot of the power in our shoulders. There's a lot of nerve endings that stem from that spinal column into our shoulders. So we try to maintain some modicum of neutrality or neutral position of the neck, even through the approach, so that when we hit that plant and takeoff position, we are tall and what we like to call stacked.
Yeah.
Stacked really refers to on takeoff, if I'm ready to jump and I'm leaving the floor, my ankle, my hip, and my shoulder are stacked axially, which just means straight up and straight down, so that the power application I'm applying to the floor is going straight down and straight up and not bleeding out of weak points in the body.
Absolutely. So I got, when I was in high school, my coach said something to me that really stuck. And what he said to me was, there's no bad sets, there's just bad approaches. And the reason why and this more pertains to an outside hitter, is no matter if I'm a left side and I'm patient, I see the ball, there's no bad set. And what I mean by that, say I passed the ball, got outside, the setter just sent me the ball way up the net, now it's just one big step, or the ball's still here and I can crush the ball. Or say if the setter set me inside and too tight, I know I gotta speed up and just get there. But no matter what, I have the ability to get my body in position so the ball's above my right shoulder. But that's on you, right? And that goes back to being patient and being fast, right? No bad set, just bad approaches.
And technique work is one of those things where at times it might seem painstaking because you have to slow down so much. But one of the big overarching principles at Project Pure Athlete is sometimes we must slow down in order to speed up. It's just the concept of getting and maintaining perspective as an athlete, and I think that's what we're really trying to do here with Mastery Camp and this collaboration of great minds.
Yeah, so think, like, this is athleticism. As much as we are talking volleyball right now, this applies to many other sports, correct? I mean, you come from basketball.
There's a lot of us across the board.
I was watching soccer today. There's a couple of great two-footed headers. I mean, athletes need to be able to take their forward momentum and apply that in a way that efficiently gets them up with control. And all of this is athletic work, so not necessarily sport specific, but pull it back. We all need to learn how to jump better. These are all great tools, man. Really appreciate you defining this and sharing this with us today.
And very soon there's going to be an article dropping that I'll make sure to link over to this video as well, being done by John Evans, another great mind in this field of jump technique, and looked over and edited by myself. It's something that really wants some momentum behind, and I know that if you guys take an opportunity to dive into the world of technique, it will pay dividends in the long run. So make sure, if you do have an opportunity, I'm sure we'll put some information in the link below to my channels, as well as these guys. I'm privileged, I'm honored, and thank you very much for having me down.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Let's go.
Thanks, Tyler.